All right, Edmar Mednis is the player here. Edmar John Mednis, playing against Bobby. Mednis eventually became a grandmaster, but not till 1980. Edmar Mednis also has a book that we're going to go over someday called How to Beat Bobby Fischer, all of Bobby's important losses. After we're done going over his wins and draws, we're going to go over Bobby's losses, doing the wins and draws first. This game was played December 29th, 1959. And Mednis starts with e4, Bobby with a Sicilian defense, c5. Knight f3 here, d6, d4, and of course we get an open variation. Pawn takes the pawn, knight takes the pawn. Knight f6 from Bobby, no surprises here. Knight c3, and of course Najdorf's variation comes with the pawn to a6. Bishop g5 here, and pawn to e6. Pawn f4 from Edmar Mednis. Bishop e7, breaking the pin on the knight. Queen f3. Queen c7 was played. This is the traditional line. Now after queen c7, queenside castles, and we get to the main line with queen's knight to d7. g4 is played now, and b5. Bishop takes the knight, and now pawn takes the bishop here. Pawn a3 from Mednis. That is not the book move, and is awarded a question mark. Coming back, the book move is f5. Here, that's going to be answered by knight e5, hitting the queen, and queen h3, moving to safety. The most common move after that is kingside castles, even though it moves to a half-open file. And in fact, you'll often see the rook come immediately to g1. Coming back, though, in this particular game, pawn a3 was played. Bishop b7, and this is the most frequently played move, even though the annotator gives it an inaccuracy. Annotator calling for rook b8. Well, that's the second most frequently played move. Come back. Rook b8 being played first, with the idea of pushing the b4, and bishop b7 will come later. Second most common is rook b8. Bishop b7 from Fischer. Now pawn f5 is played. And Bobby goes with pawn e5, hitting the knight. That knight retreats to e2, and that gets a question mark. Knight b3 is the move called for by the bot, and in fact it is the more common approach, is knight b3. Mednis with the knight to e2. Here Bobby plays knight b6. Rook c8's been played a couple of times here. Bot calling for queen b6, giving this a big red X. Rook c8, forming a battery, has been played a couple of times since this game. And of course that creates a terminal pin against the knight here. Can't move the knight without allowing a checkmate. Let's just move the knight to show the beautiful magic square checkmate. So we call that a terminal pin. You've heard of an absolute pin. You've heard of a relative pin. We call it a terminal pin when the pinned piece moves right into a selfmate. Well, the idea of this battery is not only to pin the knight, but to prepare a5 followed by b4, which attacks the pinned piece. In this game, Bobby plays the knight to b6 and is held in contempt by the annotator. Knight d5 puts the question to black. It might be more prudent to get your king off of the h6 c1 diagonal. See what the bot thinks about this. Check mark. It also gets out of the queen's line of fire, by the way. But knight d5 is played, and that's captured by the bishop. He takes the bishop. Now rook c8, and of course we are threatening the checkmate now, aren't we? So knight c3 interposes against the battery. Now knight c4, and of course the idea, it gets a question mark, but the threat is sacrifice the knight for a pawn. Probably this pawn, actually, because if you take for the b pawn, you get a new defender. So you take this pawn, and then if takes, then you take that, and you win a pawn. That's kind of the idea. This also prevents the rook from lifting. I guess knight a4 would have been a better approach. That is what the bot is calling for. Hit the pinned piece. What do you do to a pinned piece? You attack it again. But I kind of understand and like this idea. Of course, he can just take it with his bishop, And he does. This move did surprise me. I would expect queen takes, maintaining the battery, maintaining the half-open file, and maintaining the pin on the knight. Bobby took it with his pawn. I was surprised by that. See what the bot thinks about that. It does count it inaccurate, and it does say queen takes c4, maintaining the battery on the open file and the terminal pin against the knight. Thank you, Savoy Declaration. So anyway, Bobby capturing with the pawn. Very unexpected. So now king b1 was played, and now, of course, rook b8, now that that file's open. And, of course, queen b6 is going to be in the works. So king a2 getting out of the rook's line of fire. Bobby with h5. That's interesting. Wanting to break things up on the king side. G takes h5. Now bishop f8. King's rook to g1, grabbing the open file, and Bobby with king to e7, and he's just going to take refuge in the midst of this pawn mass right here. Now queen e2 and bishop h6. Here, rook g4 was played, super attacking this pawn, and Bobby takes his king's rook and plops it behind his queen, battery defending that pawn. So queen f2, now rook b7, and no doubt he's going to come here. Rook b7 not liked. Queen b6 was worth a try. The bot calling for bishop g5, saying, close off that diagonal. I don't know about that. Can't he just kick you with pawn h4? But queen here would have been certainly, it's a checkmate threat, so it forces a queen trade, does it not? Because it forks the undefended queen and the magic square. And if you move your queen to avoid the trade, you give up checkmate, so it forces the queen trade. Bobby with rook b7. Rook b1 to defend or help defend. And knight e4 has got to be in his sights at some juncture. Bobby does double his rooks on the b file, as expected. Interesting rook b6 being called for here. Yeah, I guess that also still keeps fighting. I'd imagine queen h4 here, perhaps. I get a star. That might shift black's focus. Get a star for that as well. Bobby doubles the rooks on the b file. Pretty natural move. And remember, we're not overly concerned with inaccuracies because even Ficklebot cannot agree with itself. Here is knight e4 as expected. That's marked as a mistake. Queen h4. So queen h4 battery attacks the c-pawn. And then you can always save this move for later. In fact, it not only battery attacks the c-pawn, but once the knight does come to e4, that pawn on f6 will be super attacked. So you'd have to play queen c8 here, I think. Play queen c8 so that if knight e4, well, he won't play knight e4, but if he were to play knight e4, you could defend and capture a pawn. I mean, let's say he takes. Then I'm going to take, well, actually, now he could actually play knight e4, couldn't he? It's a irrelevant super attack at the moment, but the knight is well placed there on the e4 square. And the eval bar, look at how it's really favoring white here. Interesting. Mednis playing knight e4 right away. Here, rook b6 was played. Rook b5 is just as good. Right, queen b6 probably works too here. Because this threatens checkmate, it once again forces a queen trade. This checkmate threat might not seem as obvious. Let's just do a blunder move and show. We just sacrifice the queen because the king is pinned in by his own pawn. Boom. Sort of like a blind swine checkmate, only on the side. Wow, queen takes b2, got a double exclam? Hey, how do you like those apples? Got myself a double exclam. So queen b6 would certainly be interesting. Bobby with rook b6. Knight takes the pawn here. Delicious move. Double exclam for Edmar Mednis. Really nice move. And we'll show why you can't take the knight here in a moment. But this move is going to be a winning move, isn't it? A big threat of a fork here. Bobby plays queen b7 and dares him to play the fork. Now, let's show why taking this knight is a big mistake. If you take the knight, notice this diagonal is wide open. Knight can give check right here. And you have no legal moves except to take this pawn. Now, this is wide open. So rook f1 check. And again, your only legal move is to interpose with this bishop. And of course, you can capture that with check. Double exclam, my second one of the evening. Always love getting double exclams. And after pawn takes, then queen takes the pawn is checkmate. Oh yeah. So for that reason, you cannot take the knight. And that recognition scored Mednis a double exclam. So Bobby with the queen to b7, looking to get a checkmate here on b2. Mednis does play the fork. Check. King f8 is played. That's marked as a mistake. The bot calling for king d7. Yeah, king d7 first might be better. The thing about king d7 is white can just repeat, although based on the eval bar, maybe that's what black wants. I gather Bobby does not want a repetition. Okay, so let's say you play here. I'm playing bishop c1 if you don't repeat. I'm getting another attacker here. And this rook is overworked. It can't both defend the pawn and take my bishop. And so bishop c1. White can come back to knight f6, but I'm pretty sure that's just going to be a repetition. And if you've got a 1-point advantage, you probably don't want a repetition. But Bobby didn't want a repetition, so he played king f8. Bot not liking that. Eval bar not liking that. Wow. Eval bar giving Mednis nearly a decisive advantage in this position. Now c3 is played, and that is a big red X, and the eval bar swinging toward the middle. Well, b4 works much better, and yes, the analysis bot, they no longer put the arrows. That's why I keep looking here to see what it says. b4 does work much better, although I can take that en passant. But as you can see, white's advantage is secure. Now, another fun thing for white to play, depending on how important the game is, would be queen takes b6. Let's see what I get. It tells me I'm inaccurate, but the eval bar says I'm okay. Well, I say it'd be fun to play because after queen takes queen, knight takes bishop, and white has gotten a rook and a bishop for a queen. 2 rooks and a knight against a queen and a rook is interesting. It's fun, and the eval bar says white is still the better. Although the annotator says inaccurate. I was just playing a for instance. All right, so c3 was played, big red X awarded, bishop c1, as I mentioned in the previous line, adding another attacker to the b2 square, and you're looking at rook b3, I'm imagining here, because rook b3 followed by rook takes rook, followed by queen b3 checkmate. Rook g2, blunder because rook b3, right? So you had to play knight f6 here, and that is what the bot says. So knight f6, and white is still at least equal. And the point here is now if rook takes b2, rook takes rook, queen takes rook, queen takes queen, rook takes queen, check, king has to go to a1. You can pick up this pawn, yes, but after rook takes c4, okay, you can pick up another pawn. The bot says this is relatively equal. The eval bar does. Let's go back. Interesting. Rook g2, a big blunder, and that's because of rook b3. But Bobby didn't play rook b3, surprisingly. He played rook... Oh, double exclam by Bobby. I thought that was a mistake. I thought rook b3 with the idea... Oh, I get a double exclam. Ha ha. I also got a double exclam. Both moves are double exclam. And my idea, again, is the checkmate. What's he going to do about this checkmate threat? For example, let's just do a nothing move. Let me just show the checkmate. Well, he's got 2 legal moves. Both of them allow checkmate. If king takes, you got the checkmate. Or if pawn takes, then the pawn hems in the king, and this is checkmate. Well, rook takes b2. Rook takes b2. Bishop takes the rook. Now queen c2 is played. Wow, this is not good for white. No, you don't want to take the bishop. If you take the bishop, queen takes the queen, check. Rook takes the queen. Rook takes the rook, check. King takes the rook. but now king takes the knight, and my king is better placed than your king. I've got this central defended passed pawn. I can take my sweet time. I control these squares, so your king can't get at my weakness here or here. So the best you can do is come in this direction. Say king c2, king h7, say king d2, king h6. Let's suppose king e3. I'm going to go ahead and take this. I mean, you can't stop me from coming after your h-man. I can take my pick. Both of these isolated pawns are mine to grab. I can immediately come after the f-man, or I can take away his passed pawn, which is the only threat he has left. So I think I personally would go after the passed pawn. I'm sure I would. I'll play king h4. And the point is, he's going to be in Zugzwang. Let's just blockade here. He's got one move he can play. I'm going to blockade that, and now he's in Zugzwang. He's got to move off the h3 square. He can maintain contact with this pawn. Oh, he can maintain contact with the pawn. Yeah, so I guess I have to come after this pawn. Even if he comes here and I come here, he could just maintain contact. Yeah, so probably best to come this way. Oh, it's his turn. So he can maintain contact. I'll just come here, pick off this one. He's never going to be able to escort this pawn up the board. All right, back. Queen c2 was played. Bobby with queen b5. No doubt coming to a5, check and mate. How does white prevent queen a5? Don't really see a way. Queen b6 also being called for by the annotator. Maybe queen takes pawn can even be played. I don't know that it matters, because from here I'm still accessing a5. It says it's a mistake. I guess because of knight f6. But queen a5, and I'm threatening check, followed by mate. So, okay, so if he gives check here, yeah. If he gives check, king e7 is forced. And then do not take the rook. Play knight d5 check. And we're not going to take that knight. We're going to bring our king over. Right, first of all, let's bring our king over. He'll come back, and we'll bring the king over. He can come back, but now king c6 should be fine. Eventually, he's going to play a4 to prevent queen takes the pawn. But once he does, this rook is left hanging, isn't it? Now, let's come back and point out, first of all, why we don't want to play queen takes d5 here. Whoa! Rook takes, and guess what? Queen a5 is of no use anymore because that bishop is going to fall. Bishop's trapped. So that was easy. But here, why not play rook takes the rook? Well, I already pointed it out. Check and checkmate. So you do have to play exactly. All right, the bot not caring for queen takes d5. Bobby with queen b5. You know, I will say this. Resist bishop takes. You might think, oh yeah, just take it because the queen can't take, because that would be checkmate. But remember, the queen's not forced to take. He can just play h6, for example. You do not take and allow checkmate in one. But you push your pawn, and boy, that's getting awfully close to becoming a queen. I'm not even sure what I play here as black. So bishop takes c3. When black tries to get cute, things actually get ugly. All right, after queen c2, queen b5 was played. Now f6 is played, trying to hem in the king, but that's given a question mark. Really, white doesn't have any moves, so he's grasping at straws. Knight h6 doesn't work because queen a5 again here, and then you're compelled to play a4. You don't want to play rook g8 here, right? That would be catastrophic. You'd be compelled to play a4. Oh, you know what? I could come after that square from here. Boom. Boom, boom, boom. And then he has to give up his queen for my bishop, or he's made it in two. Lovely. So he gets a bishop and a rook for a queen. But I think I can win with this. Come after the knight. Something like that. Which means that probably better than knight h6. Since you're going to have to give up your queen for the bishop anyway, it's probably the best try right away, because then black has to capture with his queen. But you're losing your knight, And the king is way too far away and boxed out of any access to our weaknesses. His king can never access our weaklings. Meanwhile, we'll pick off his, as demonstrated earlier. So white literally has no good moves. So grasping at straws, he says, all right, I will at least set up a mating net, play my knight to h6, and checkmate Bobby on g8, because he just won't see this threat. Maybe time was short, he's grasping at straws, but sure enough, queen a5 is a faster checkmate threat because his first move comes with check. If Mednis now plays the h6 threatening mate in 1, a lot good it did him. He's being mated himself. And again, because he's being mated, he's now compelled to give up the queen for the bishop. And that's what he played. Queen takes bishop, rook takes queen check. And don't take with the rook where you leave your knight hanging. Your last hope is to take with the king and play rook knight and passed pawn against a queen. White's problem is that black's queen can very quickly get active, and does quickly get active, with queen takes the d5. Hitting the rook, he tries rook g7, still hoping against hope. Queen d2 check. The queen is just way too active. Poor king is forced to either b1 or a1. He takes b1, queen d1 check, king b2, queen b3 check, king c1, queen takes the pawn check. The time control was satisfied, and white resigned.